Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center, a program that focuses on developments in the Philippines, legislations that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concerns the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of this and more will be in Front and Center. Join me in this half-hour program here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can watch this program over Radyo Pilipinas World Service via Facebook page live broadcast. Just access our Facebook page, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You also can catch every Front and Center programs over our YouTube channel. Just type in your YouTube browser, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You can also listen to our programs via shortwave broadcast through the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 12.010 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. I'm your host, Rey Sampang. For today's edition of Front and Center, we take a look on what is happening in the Middle East, or what has happened in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and Hamas, where Hamas militant groups attacked Israel, and how it has affected Filipinos living and working in the region. On October 11, 2023, the Philippines learned and confirmed the death of two Filipino nationals in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The death of said Filipino comes after news that thousands of casualties from both sides continue to rise, not including foreign nationals taken hostages by Hamas and taken inside Gaza, wherein the latter plans to use them as shields, threatening to kill hostages due to the onslaught of the airstrikes in Gaza. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. expressed his deep sadness in learning the death of two Filipinos in Israel and condemned the attack of Hamas, and held firm on the country's stand that peace must be achieved through the principles of the United Nations resolution and international law. And according to the Philippine President, the moment he informs the families of the Filipinos killed in the conflict, it will be the hardest thing he will ever do as the leader of the country. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. earlier has given directives to different government agencies, including the Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Migrant Workers, and different Philippine embassies. This to ensure the safety of all Filipinos living and working in Israel and even in Gaza. If need be, conduct a repatriation or evacuation mission on Filipinos that will be placed under harm's way. In a press briefing, Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs Undersecretary for Migrant Affairs Eduardo de Vega assured the Foreign Affairs Department, together with other government agencies, are closely working together to ensure the safety of all Filipinos in Israel and in Gaza.
As mentioned, the President has given instructions to our agencies. It is a whole-of-government approach, and it does not involve only the DFA and the DMW, including DMW OWA, but we are meeting with other government agencies such as the DND, DSWD, DOLE, TESDA, and other offices as we work together to ensure the safety and protection of our kababayans in Israel and Gaza. Let us remember that the situation is not just one which affects territory which is now in the state of Israel, but also in Palestine, specifically in the Gaza Strip, where there has been a shift in the center of hostilities after the weekend where we saw, and you have reported, the Hamas attacks on the south of Israel. But we are here to assure you that the government is on top of the situation. We're doing everything we can, and we will update you, or we will brief you now on the steps we're undertaking. Aside from the Philippine Embassy in Tel Aviv, our embassies in Amman, Jordan, which has jurisdiction over the Palestinian territories, and Cairo, Egypt, because it is at the border of Gaza, are also part of our working group.
You just heard the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Eduardo de Vega. It can be remembered that on October 7, 2023, Hamas conducted a military incursion inside the southern region of Israel near the border of Gaza and Israel. The attack caught Israel off guard despite its military dominance compared to Hamas, not including the well-renowned intelligence community of the country, such as the Mossad and its armed forces intelligence community. And even the United States failed to provide much-needed intelligence on the Hamas attack, which is now described as a terrorist attack, and maybe took months to plan with the help of other countries sympathetic to the Hamas cause. In response, the Israeli government, headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, declared that Israel is in a state of war and that swift and devastating military action will be taken against Hamas and their leaders, and even warned Palestinian civilians to leave Gaza for their own safety. Since then, military operations continue in the southern region of Israel, exacting a heavy toll on the Palestinian militants and civilians. On Monday, or last Monday, October 9, I had the chance to interview Israeli ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Ilan Flass. In our discussion, I asked the Israeli ambassador on what happened on that fateful Saturday and what is the situation in Israel as we spoke last Monday. During our discussion, the concern of minimizing civilian casualties was raised in light of the plans of the Israeli government to conduct a military or massive military operations, which the Israeli Defense Forces is already doing inside Gaza. Ambassador Flass also made an assurance that despite the ongoing military operations against Hamas, the bilateral trade agreements with the Philippines will not be hampered or affected, and that the Israeli government will honor these agreements, as well as the commitment to protect Filipino overseas workers and other nationalities working and living in Israel will be protected by their government. Here is my interview with Israeli Ambassador Ilan Flass. We now have in our line of communication our Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Ilan Flass. Shalom, Ambassador Flass. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Shalom, Ray. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for indulging us in our program today, Ambassador Flass. First on the list of our question is, can you give us an update on the actual situation in Israel as we speak, Ambassador?
Yes. Well, we're still probably in the last stages of gaining control over the southern part of Israel. Still also in the process of assessing the exact situation and what took place, and obviously still accounting for the injured and more also of course the deceased, the murdered, and at the same time preparing ourselves and already started the next stage, which is of course we cannot agree to continue living with a terror organization that again and again is attacking Israeli civilians, and now we are moving to the next stage of basically eradicating the terror and the military capabilities.
Ambassador Flass, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is at war and that it will implement a military operation offensive against Hamas in Gaza. One that will be cannot be compared to other military operations. How can this be done? How can the Israeli Defense Force assure that the military operations against these militants will spare or will have a minimal casualties on civilians?
Well, I have to say that the Hamas does not make any distinction between civilians and militants. As we have seen, using an Israeli holiday, the Simchat Torah, where Jews were in synagogues, and taking this opportunity and attacking Israeli citizens, civilians, towns, villages, elderly, children. This is something that we cannot agree to have this at our front door, and it's happening again and again, and this time into such a scale. So actually, the Hamas has basically opened a war against Israel, and we cannot. So now, basically, we're in a stage of war. Now, the IDF, I think, globally is well known for operating in such complicated areas. Since Hamas is not is using civilian shields as part of their strategy, and they're operating from within Gaza, on purpose, from within mosques, within hospitals, and what we are calling is on civilians to keep away from Hamas operatives in order to be affected. We do not attack indiscriminately. We attack only Hamas bases and the Hamas operations. We have to remember Hamas is supported by Iran. Iran basically is behind it, and we are slowly receiving more information about coordination. It has still to be verified, but generally speaking, Hamas is an organization supported by Iran and gets its weapons, ammunition, funding from Iran. Israel, I just want to repeat, Israel is making sure as much as it can when it is fighting against terror, and that's a global effort, not to hit civilians and people who are not involved.
Okay. Well, Ambassador Vlas, will the ongoing military operation against Hamas affect any bilateral agreements with the Philippines, especially in the area of agriculture, innovation and technology, labor, and other agreements, especially the modernization of the Philippines armed forces?
I don't expect that anything of that kind will happen. I think we have very strong and close bilateral relations. The agreements are solid. The commitment is there. It is important to say that we care for the Filipino workers. We have caregivers in Israel. We have hotel workers in Israel from the Philippines, close to 30,000. And this is something I raised actually last night in a meeting with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Cohen, who has actually expressed it very, very clearly that we are committed to the safety and security of Filipinos and any other foreign nationals in Israel, as same as we are responsible for the well-being of Israelis. We do not make any distinction between Israelis and non-Israelis. We'll make sure, or we'll do our best, the same as we do always, for Israelis and for non-Israelis. On other MOUs, we are committed to our agreements. Until now, to the best of my knowledge, there is no impact on bilateral relations, on bilateral agreements. Let me also say that I did get we got a lot of messages of support and sympathy from different communities, from politicians, from people within government, with civil society, of course from the church, Christian movements, friends, business colleagues, who all basically send me very, very kind messages of sympathy, of support in Israel in its difficult time, and we see this globally. And I have to say the message of support, I think at this time, are very important and very meaningful, and I'm happy that we are receiving this kind of support here in a very close and friendly ally of Israel in the Philippines.
And of course, just what you said, Ambassador Vlas, the Israeli government is assuring the safety of all Filipinos living and working, not only in the southern region, not only in the Gaza Strip, but all over Israel. Thank you very much, Ambassador Vlas, for your time, and we are sincerely praying for the safety of all Israelis and all other nationalities living and working in Israel for their safety. Thank you very much, Ambassador Vlas.
Thank you very much.
You just heard our interview with Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, Ilan Vlas. Indeed, the world is watching closely, monitoring the events between Israel and Hamas as the military operation against the militant group continues, exacting also a toll on the civilian Palestinian population. Recently, the United States Armed Forces has sent one of its naval fleet in the eastern Mediterranean region as a show of solidarity and support for Israel. Israel is an old and important ally of the Philippines. Recently, under the administration of Philippine President Bongbong Marcos, Israel has been helping the Philippines in terms of agricultural education and training in agricultural technology and innovation, being host to thousands of Filipino workers in the field of healthcare, education, hotel services, household service workers, and even in developing some aspects of modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines. The whole world is once again reeling from another conflict in the Middle East, as if the Russia-Ukraine war is not enough to put a terrible toll on the world's geopolitical situation, claiming thousands of civilian lives and displacing millions of people from their homes and livelihood. The ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict further deepens the turmoil the world is facing, and Filipinos living and working in Israel and in Gaza are this time also taking the consequences of such conflict. We'll be back with Front and Center after the break.
Time to celebrate kulturang Pinoy. Tradisyon, musika, sining, literatura at iba pa. Anything and everything fun and Filipino. Ito ang Pinoy Kultura.
Alam mo ba kung ano ang mambabatok? Think about the tap, tap, tap of the bamboo stick on a thorn to draw a symbol on someone's arm. This is the traditional Kalinga art of tattooing, performed and kept alive by traditional tattoo artist Wangod Ogay, also known as Maria Ogay from Buscalan, Tinglayan, Kalinga. Wikipedia says Wangod is the Philippines' oldest mambabatok at 105 years old now. Sarah Barnes honors Wangod in My Modern Metro, telling Wangod's story as an apprentice at 15. Breaking the norm, learning the mambabatok tradition that used to be taught only to men. The art began with the indigenous Butbut warriors, headhunters, who got tattoos with special meaning, usually after a kill. But for women, the art portrayed standards of beauty. Wangod recalls her friends covering her arms and legs with tattoos she still wears proudly. She mixes her ink from pine soot and water and has hand-tapped tattoos on bodies of people from all over the world. Wangod inks a design that carries symbolic meanings specific to the mambabatok culture. Thousands come to make the long journey to get inked by Wangod. Discovery Channel featured her and her art in 2007 on Tattoo Hunter, bringing Kalinga art to a global audience. The National Commission for Culture and the Arts honored her with the prestigious Dangal ng Haraya Award in 2018. She was also nominated for the National Living Treasures Award.
Yan ang Pinoy Kultura because our culture is cool.
You're still listening to Front and Center here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. I'm your host, Rey Sampang. Now we go to recent developments in the Philippines. Filipino farmers will soon reap the fruits of their labor. This as Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. approved the release of 12.7 billion pesos to fund a 5,000 peso cash aid for each of 2.3 million small rice farmers under the government's Rice Farmers Financial Assistance Program or RFFA. The said program was ordered by the President and was given directive to the Department of Agriculture to use the excess collections of the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund or RCEF to provide drying, mechanization, and other equipment for rice farmers to help them sustain their productivity. Under Republic Act 11203 or the Rice Tariffication Law, revenues collected from the rice tariff should pay for the yearly requirement of 10 billion pesos for the RCEF to bankroll programs and projects raising the competitiveness and output of rice farmers. Meanwhile, in other developments, after seeing a sharp drop in his approval and trust ratings, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said the prices and availability of rice, not survey numbers, are the indicators of his governance, adding that the prices of the food staple are stabilizing because of measures implemented by the government. President Marcos' approval and trust rating have seen significant erosions, falling by double digits last month of September. This is according to a nationwide Pulse Asia survey. While a majority of 65% of respondents to the September 10 to 14 poll said they approved of President Marcos' performance, it was lower by 15 points when compared to the 80% recorded in June. About 10% of the respondents said they approved of the chief executive's performance, while 25% remained undecided. The same survey also found 71% saying they trusted President Marcos, lower by 14 points from the 85% last June. Some 6% said they distrust the president, while 23% were undecided on the matter. In a media interview last October 4, President Marcos said the drop in his poll numbers was not surprising because people are having a hard time because of the higher prices of rice and other agricultural products. The Philippine chief executive said his administration would implement other strategies to help farmers and ensure they are not incurring losses, citing initiatives on irrigation, mechanization, cheap fertilizer, post-harvest facilities, farm-to-market roads, lowering transport costs, and the proper timing and balance of the importation on farm goods. One of these strategies is the suspension of the pass-through fees. This as President Marcos signed an executive order directing local government units or towns in collecting fees on logistical or transport vehicles transporting agricultural or basic commodities to the local markets. Pass-through fees are toll fees, permit fees, entry or exit fees that adds to the transportation cost that is contributing to push prices of basic commodities, especially rice, to go higher. The suspension of the pass-through fees is seen by many to have a positive impact on transportation companies. That transportation basic commodities, for it translates to savings, while the move is also seen to help lessen the prices and help ordinary Filipinos, especially this coming Yuletide season. And with that, we bring to a close this first edition of Front and Center. Join us again next time here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. You can listen to all our programs. You can listen to all the programs of Radio Pilipinas in the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 12.010 MHz, and 17.820 MHz. And also watch our programs on our Facebook page. Just type in your Facebook browser, Radio Pilipinas World Service. And watch all of the station's program in our YouTube channel, Radio Pilipinas World Service. You could also reach us through our email, dzrp@radiopilipinas@gmail.com. I repeat, our email address is dzrp.radiopilipinas@gmail.com. With our producer, Mr. Erwin Peñano, and with our technical personnel in studio, Mr. Milo Janela, Ms. Susan Aison, Mr. Anthony Pimentel, and Mr. Leo Magpayo, this is your host, Rey Sampang. Thank you for listening and watching Front and Center. Good day from the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radio Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.